Hello, this is your host, Todd Lewis, the Praise of Fly podcast. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe and hit the notification bell. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter, Telegram, and Facebook, and support me on Subscribestar, Locals, and Buy Me a Coffee. Tonight is a Halloween special. Rain, a returning guest, reached out to me about a month or two ago about the possibility of covering the Shang Dynasty because of cannibalism and human sacrifice, which he thought would fit well for the day. So glad to have you back, Rain. Why don't you introduce us to the topic?
Yeah, glad to be here. Thank you for having me here. So this topic actually started with a tweet between Morgoth and one of the Greek statue guy on Twitter. Maybe you can share the presentation to show which tweet I was talking about. It was like a very much retweeted tweet from a while ago between Morgoth and I think it was Raw Egg Nationalist.
Raw Egg Nationalist, yeah. I'm going to bring it up now. Just give me a second here.
Yes, sorry, I have a bit of cough.
There we go. Everybody should be able to see it.
Yeah, so basically in this tweet, as you like, Rag naturally like a lot of less informed people were saying like, over the 5,000 years, the Chinese has been replaced multiple times, so the current day Chinese are not even like the original Chinese. And when I got that tweet, it actually got me into reading about the Chinese, the Han Chinese genetic studies, as well as how like the early, and that went into a big rabbit hole and got me into like how the early Chinese were like, because for by our standard, the way we define the starting of civilization, the hard cutoff is you must have a written language. So by that standard, the Chinese civilization will have truly started at the Shang Dynasty. So that's pretty much the tweet that started this rabbit hole.
All right. And you're arguing that China does, in fact, have a contiguous 5,000-year history.
If you count as civilization, it's more like over 3,000 years, because Shang Dynasty was like, I think like 3,005. Let me just check. Shang Dynasty. Let's just double check instead of giving some wrong numbers. So Shang Dynasty established 1600 BC. So that would be 3,600 years, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if we count writing language, technically Chinese civilization has 3,600 years. The 5,000 history is more of a how do I say the culture, like the identity and the culture. Like if you count the oral tradition and archaeological sites, but if you want the strict definition, it started 366,000 years because of the writing language.
Okay, so why don't you introduce the Shang to us? Now, I'll just say for the audience, I first heard about the Shang playing Age of Empires, the 1990s video game, not 2, but 1. And the stand-in China faction was the Shang Dynasty. And I didn't know much about it, but that's what they had as the faction.
Sorry, I was unmuted. Oh yeah, so basically, if you can put out the presentation, we can just go slide by slide. For this presentation, I mostly prepared images rather than details, since I want to make this presentation a bit more.
So do you have something that I could share? I don't see.
I think I sent you like a PDF and your Telegram.
Let me see. Do I have a PDF here? I have some pictures, and
that's it. Yeah, the PDF is only pictures. I didn't put much in terms of text.
Oh, okay. Well, then we'll share the pictures then. Just give me a second here.
Yeah, it's just a PDF with pictures in each slide.
Okay, so we got one.
Oh no, it's not this. It's not this. Let me send you. It was in Telegram. I sent you a Telegram.
Oh, on Telegram. Well, let's see. Do I have?
Yeah. Yep.
All right, I'm bringing up Telegram here.
Yeah, sorry guys, just waiting. Yeah, well, I should have told it wasn't Telegram before.
Yeah. Ah, there we go. Of course. Okay. All right, come on. Okay, share screen. Oh, I don't want that either. Hold on. Huh. Oh, wait, I saw it. Hold on, there it was. Share screen. There we go. There we go. Okay, here we go.
Yeah, we started with a tweet between Raeg and Morgoth.
Oh,
So basically, you can go to the previous the second slide. Okay, so basically, after I saw this tweet, I actually went into the into some Chinese genetic studies because even in our own school, we were told that Han Chinese were actually mix of many ethnic groups, and there is not really such a thing as a Han Chinese. But after I read through the genetic study, it turns out that that was actually a lie. It was actually propaganda for the sake of national unity. When people studied Chinese in different regions and compared the genetic material they found in the ancient Greek site, notably like in the ancient Zhou dynasty and Shang dynasty Chinese, what they found out is actually something really weird. So these first pictures, if you look at this is actually the genetics of the Chinese, the Han Chinese maternal ancestry. The orange are northern Chinese. The purple are the southern Chinese. As you can see from the maternal side, the Chinese are actually very diverse, right? The center is basically the ancient Chinese from like 3,000 years ago. But if you go into the paternal ancestry, the next image, as you can see, it's all clustered together.
Yeah.
So basically, what happened is that they were mixing between Chinese and the ancient Chinese and the minority around, but it wasn't like a gentle kind of mix, because otherwise you will not get this very clustered paternal ancestry with a very diverse maternal ancestry. And when I dig up even more into genetic studies, the actually around 40% of Han Chinese are actually descendant of only 3 guys from 5,000 years ago. So basically, this idea that the Chinese like to cultivate ourselves, that we're like this peaceful agricultural civilization that never attack everyone, that is very peace loving, is actually propaganda, because the genetic study doesn't look like a peaceful people.
Yeah, well, I think in the West, for the point of view of the United States, I think the peaceful China narrative begins in World War II for propaganda reasons to use against Japan. I think before World War II in the United States, not too many people thought about China.
Yeah. So basically, that's what I got. Digging into the genetic studies. So then I started to read into the ancient China, like Shang Dynasty and before, because we know that around the Zhou Dynasty, that's when like you get this image of this bureaucratic and very, I guess, bureaucratic Chinese. But before the Zhou Dynasty, the ancient Chinese were actually very bloodthirsty and wild. And I think this kind of ancient culture kind of explains this kind of genetic result, that you have this very group of male ancestry versus a very diverse maternal ancestry. That's my theory.
Well, the other thing too is, but the core of China, ancient China, was between the Yangtze and the Yellow River, and to the south, they were not really considered Chinese until later into the after the Han Dynasty collapsed, and then the Song Dynasty eventually became the heart of China during the Middle Ages.
Yes, and speaking of like the south of China that is not considered Chinese before, I would say something that many, if you have any Vietnamese viewer, will quite hate me for that. Do you know how Vietnam came to be? Before, in the ancient time, they were actually called the Nan Yue or Nam Viet. Vietnam actually come to be because actually this actually gonna give us like an image how this kind of genetic structure may arise. Is that the a general of the Qin dynasty after the unification by the first emperor, he actually went down to like conquer the land of those many southern tribes, and he told the emperor that okay, so he brought 300,000 fighting age men there, and he said like, okay, so I cannot, my army, I conquered this land, I cannot go back because if I go back, this land, we're gonna lose this land. So the only way for me to control this land is that my troop have family with the locals. But considering it's 300,000 fighting age men, you can get the pictures.
Yes.
Yeah, and then he asked another 300,000 troop, and and in the end, like, so that's why, like, I think like over half of Vietnamese like shared paternal ancestry with Chinese because of that. So that gives us an idea like how that may happen. Yeah, quite brutal when you think about it.
Well, early on, yeah. I mean, what China does in the early, culturally, it's able to impose its will on all the region north and south of those two rivers, but it takes a while to integrate, and it's not really until the Middle Ages that they become Sinicized.
Yeah. So that's where I noticed there's like a culture very underrated part of China is the Shang Dynasty, which is the part of China before we got more civilized and tamed. So as you can see, like the way they are dressed and their armor are very much different than after the Shang Dynasty, and they even have like a very Aztec vibe before Aztec and Olmec were a thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, for the Shang, right? They're still using bronze and chariots, and so yeah, they're going to be more of a warrior elite aristocracy rather than a bureaucracy. So
yeah,
I think, go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, like, yes, they were like a warrior elite, and the warrior nobles were also priests. So they basically, you have a, that's when also like the ancient caste system in China established. So the ruling class are actually the warrior priest. They participate to the human sacrifice and the rituals, and and then they rule, and then the farmers, the artisans, then the merchant. So even from ancient time, like the merchant is considered like the lowest class, and the warrior priest the highest class. And after the fall of Shang Dynasty, the warrior priest kind of become the scholar bureaucrat. So the so-called bureaucrat in China, they actually started off as a caste of warrior priest. And I will also say that in the Shang Dynasty, one thing that I actually did some research, what distinguishes the Shang Dynasty versus the other ancient civilization of its time, is that even though both the Egyptian and the Mesopotamian have bronze, the Shang Dynasty, what they stood out is like they kind of the first who kind of industrialized the bronze production. So they were actually like they were actually building a very effective production chain of bronze and have a lot of bronze tool for both farming and war, which give us like quite a big advantage in the against the neighboring tribes, so to speak.
Yeah. Now, one thing that I want to point out too is that while we look at China today and we think of bureaucracy and we think of, the Confucian schools that, people would go to then, take the exams and see if they could be. But from the Shang Dynasty right up until the Han Dynasty, it's a warrior aristocracy. We don't really have a bureaucracy like we're familiar with until around the Han Dynasty. And then it starts to shift with the merging of the philosophies of Confucius and legalism.
Yes. Yeah, so this is basically like an image of the oracle script, and that's also like where we consider like the starting of the Chinese civilization, because for us civilization began with writing. So you can see like evolution of writing from oracle script to modern script. So I think you can, yeah, you can go to the next slide.
You want 6 or 7?
Previous slide.
Okay. So this is 5 script.
Okay, yeah, you can just move up, move. Yeah. Next slide. Yeah. So, but one thing, yeah. So this is actually an image I want to show. Like, but one thing that a lot of that's not well known about the Shang Dynasty is like they are very much into both human sacrifice and cannibalism, and when we found the ancient capital of the Shang, the ancient the archaeologists were actually surprised of the sheer number of human sacrifice in just even the tomb of small nobles. So they basically what they found out is that the Shang were like sacrificing people for almost everything. For like any ritual, they will like kill a few people and eat them, and they win a war, they will sacrifice a bunch of people. And the based in the ancient writing, the Shang basically have this slave human sacrifice industrial complex. So they will like go to war, they will take prisoners, they take women as war bride, and the men, they make them a slave. They work themselves until they are 2 weeks to work as slave. They sacrifice them, then eat them. Basically, yeah.
That sounds pretty gangster.
Yeah, they like those skull shape in their axe, and they wore like skull helmet and skull mask. So they were like very hardcore. Was a very hardcore culture, let's say.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. So next image. Yes, this is like the layout of a tomb. As you can see, like they were putting sacrifice inside the tomb, and this is actually a cooking pot. This was actually like the skull of a teenage girl that was cooked and eaten.
Wow, that's pretty dark.
Yeah, like a human skull. This I actually is from like a Vietnam. This actually like is from like a Vietnamese YouTuber that show like a translation of a small part of instant script, so you can read what is being said there.
The king chops and minces the meat of a chieftain named Wu Qi and eats it.
Yeah. So yeah, and what I learned. The other funny thing what I learned is like the ancient time, the character that you use for different like a social class and different like name of different tribe and people. Those were actually the character actually shaped in the way those people will be sacrificed, like how they will be like hanged, carved up, and chopped. So basically, like an artisan, if he's an artisan, we're gonna chop him that way. If he's a noble, we're gonna chop him that way. And also, they are brutal in the way that you don't get away with it because you're like a chief. Actually, the Shang believe that the value of the sacrifice is scales with the importance of the people being sacrificed. So if you're like the leader, an enemy general, you're actually more likely to get sacrificed, because the Shang think that, oh yes, you're a king, you're a chieftain. So if I sacrifice you, it's actually have greater magical power for my magic.
Well, yeah, the Aztecs were like that too. The more noble you were, the more valuable you were as a sacrifice.
Yeah. It's quite a funny coincidence. And now I like to. So now I talk a bit about how the ancient Shang Chinese were like, and now I actually like to cover like how, the interaction between them and the ancient Indo-European, because actually we know that I think this part you probably know a bit more than me. We know that Indo-European, they probably arrived in pretty much in every location of the Eurasian continent, but around the time when they arrived into China were actually at the Shang Dynasty, and the red part is actually the territory of the ancient Indo-European steppe nomad, and the green is the Shang Dynasty.
Yeah, so around 1800 BC, the Indo-Europeans domesticate the horse and the chariot and use the chariot, and that's when they conquer Europe and the Middle East and much of Asia, and then eventually the Eastern steppe is supplanted by Mongolian peoples or the Turkic peoples. But yeah, early on, the Tokharians were one such group of Indo-European nomads.
According to so basically you can go to the next slide. So according to the Oracle script, they were actually mentioned of the ancient Indo-European steppe nomad, and they were actually we actually found the artifact about those people. So as you can see, those artifacts, they wouldn't even look weird if you find that in Europe, don't you feel?
Yeah, it wouldn't be out of place.
Yeah. So those people were the Shang Dynasty were, because for like a long part of the Shang Dynasty, they were talking about the war against the Guifang, which in Chinese translate as the demonic frontier or the demonic factions. And in ancient China, when a group is referred as demons, is because they look different physically. And so we think that the Guifang are the early Indo-European steppe nomads that arrived into China. And not just that, we actually even found the skull, the Caucasian-looking skull inside the sacrificial pit of the Shang Dynasty. That means they definitively interacted. And to reply to what raw egg nationalists said early on in the tweet, that a lot of people think that the ancient Chinese noble were actually Indo-European that replaced that ruled the native population, like what happened in India, was because of that early on they found a lot of Caucasian skull in the Shang Dynasty excavation site. But later on, they realized those were actually sacrificial pits. And when they unearthed it, like the tomb of commoner and the nobles, they were actually Asian looking. So basically, the ancient Indo-European actually arrived in China, but they were actually eventually defeated by the Shang Dynasty. But the Shang Dynasty didn't kill them off. They kind of become like a vassal for a while, but then they fight again. So it's basically been like a on and off fight between Indo-European, then eventually was the Xiongnu, then the Mongols. It lasted for thousands of years.
Well, yeah, the idea of calling white people devils, the Japanese called the first European sailors they saw white devils, so they probably got that from the broader Cynic culture they were a part of, and also I think a lot of these guys might have just gone west, right? I mean, for example, the Xiongnu against the Han Dynasty eventually went west and became the Huns.
Yes, and even the Hungarian consider the Xiongnu to be their ancestor.
Yeah, so a lot of times what happens is the steppe nomads in China butt heads, and then after a while they go west because they're tired of fighting the Chinese.
Yeah, and over the year they look like more and more Asian-ish, and eventually now the Mongol look very Asian, even though their paternal ancestry is a very different one as the Chinese. So the idea that Chinese were like actually the descendant of a steppe nomad actually got debunked by that.
I see. Ooh, we have an elephant here.
Yeah. So this is actually to address one of your old tweet, because you were wondering like how people were dealing against like the steppe nomad before the inventing of the Gatling gun. So from what I read about the ancient Shang Dynasty is that before the Shang met with the Guifang, with the Indo-Europeans, they do not know how to use horses. But they did have elephant as a cavalry, and that kind of played a role in their war against the Indo-Europeans. And they also, after war with them, they also adopted horse very quickly. So basically, the ancient Shang, they basically fought early on. They used the infantry and war elephants, but they learned the Indo-European way of war very quickly. So they also adopted horse and chariot. Actually, they learned from them, and that's basically how it happened. I actually talked with one of my friends who read quite a lot about the history as well. According to him, uh, like horse archer are actually very hard to deal with. If you just have some peasant army, but if you have a quite disciplined infantry, you can actually deal with them as well. Even though you cannot catch up to them, if you have like shield and have good formation, it's actually very hard for light cavalry with just a bow to break through.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's what I read.
Okay, yeah. Well, so I'll just briefly weigh in on this. What the horse archers do is they don't attack you directly. They wear you down. Now, the steppe nomads did not have lancers until much later, and then you have a hammer and anvil strategy. And of course, Genghis Khan and the Mongols use this, where you have like maybe 80% of your army's horse archers and 20% are lancers. And so then once you soften the enemy up, you'll break them with a charge. But at the time of the Shang, there were no lancers, so that just wasn't an option for the ancient Indo-Europeans.
There's actually a question I'd like to ask you. Uh, there's something I didn't read too much, but how generally are elephant cavalry against normal cavalry, like effectiveness? So
Very effective, generally very effective, because horses are terrified of elephants.
oh, yeah, because there's one interesting note that I found about ancient China is that 3,000 years ago, the climate is actually very different as than today. There were actually a lot of elephant in ancient China, and even around the time of the Qing dynasty, uh, elephant meat is considered delicacy among the nobles. So it just say like the climate actually has been changing for a long time, so it's not just the modern day.
So what you're telling me, Rain, the Chinese will eat anything: humans, elephants, rats, mice, pigs, pangolins, and bats.
Yes, I think any animal the Chinese will eat, even the toxic one, they're gonna find a way to remove the toxin. And I actually wonder, maybe it's the leftover of the Shang dynasty and early on that make like cannibalism in time of war in China so common. I mean, even a few years ago, they were like a case of cannibal village in China. So
Well, I mean, war also puts pressure on people. Even Europeans will resort to cannibalism in emergencies. But yeah.
yeah, in China is a whole new level, let's just say.
Well, like I said, Chinese eat anything.
So now that we covered about the original tweet, as I read about the Shang Dynasty, I also got into like two conspiracy theory. One, as you mentioned earlier, the I think is not this one, is a previous one or next one.
So you want to stay here at number 12?
Yes, just the wait. Let me hope I send you the right one. Oh yes, actually this one is the bad order. Actually, move it into the jump the
Okay.
yeah jump into the page with the Olmec. So as you mentioned earlier, like a lot of the practice of the Shan are actually very much like what the Aztec and the Olmec were doing. And there were actually studies that some fringe conspiracy theory that some of the Shan after the previous image was actually the battle between the Shan and the Zhou, the final battle. When after that battle, there were like a couple 100,000 of Shan army that disappeared. And there was some conspiracy that they went either by boat or through the Bering Strait and arrived into Americas and founded the Olmec. And that's why the Olmec, and as they really love human sacrifice and cannibalism, and even like the Chinese like dragons, even like some of the feathered serpent god in the Mesoamericas. But it's remained of like an interesting but fringe theory, but it's still quite interesting, especially if you do those like comparison between like ancient Olmec writing and the Oracle script. You can take.
No, yeah, that is interesting. I've never actually heard that before.
Yeah, but one thing that I found a bit weird, yeah, as you can see here, like how like the ancient Shang looks like. But what I found weird is like the Shang has like very advanced metallurgy. But the the Mesoamerican civilization they have no writing and no bronze technology, which is something that I found a bit weird.
Well, that would sort of militate against the connection, right? Because why
Yeah.
wouldn't they have it?
Yeah. Theory is that the people that went there were actually mostly military, so they kind of lost the refining and the mining tech, and so they just. But like I say, it was just like we like a funny conspiracy theory. So that's the first conspiracy theory, and the second one is you can put on the next slide. The second one we're going to there's some real crazy place. Because like I said, like we're Halloween, so we have to go a bit into the supernatural and paranormal space. Do you think?
Yeah, yeah. Let's go.
So, so this is also about the fall of the Shang Dynasty because uh, before we have this official version that the Zhou. Sorry, I have cut off a bit. That the Zhou were defeated the Shang because the Shang were like corrupt and evil. But now with Oracle script, we have like a more Shang version of the fall of the Shang dynasty, and like ancient time, people like to write. Some people like to write the history like a bit like a semi mystified form, and
Yeah.
I'm gonna like so here I'm gonna share like a conspiracy, like an alternative history that if people want to, if any of viewer want to create like their own setting or want to play with a new realm of alternate history, you can into that realm. So basically, uh, the idea comes from before the Zhou dynasty. After the Zhou dynasty, like the Chinese emperor, their title is the Sons of Heaven in ancient China, heaven can mean multiple things. Can mean like the gods with a small g, or God with capital G, or like the rule of the universe, or if you mean like the God with small g is like the celestial bureaucracy. But it had this implication that the emperor was like appointed by the god or the gods. But before the Zhou dynasty, the ruler of China were not called that. Was the title that given to them was Ren Huang, which roughly translates as sovereign of humanity, or if you like 40K, emperor of mankind.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So why is that? So this comes from like a myth that that you have this. Have you ever had this conspiracy theory that a lot that the present day, the world we have in present day, like actually the past has been rearranged. That the past is not the real past. That like because of some uh, great magic or great ancient world of the past, that the past has been changed retroactively.
Well, I mean, I'm familiar with people who make such claims, but I don't
Yeah.
believe that.
Yeah, no, it's not that you believe, but like it's more like this kind of conspiracy theory. So there is a bit of that in this. Is that basically before during the Shang Dynasty, the humans were basically like living gods. We are mortal, like which means we age and die a bit, but we can wield great magic. We can change the weather, predict the future, and we can go directly into the realm of the god. The human philosopher could debate with a god. A great human hero can't fight against a god with a small g and win. And even the afterlife were controlled by the human themselves. But basically, like we human, we are like the equal to the gods. We're just like living in a different realm. So what happened is that the ruler of the gods, the king of the gods, uh, grows weary of the strength of humanity. So he conspired with the king of the Zhou dynasty. So the Zhou dynasty promised to the king of the god that if you help me go to war against the Shang dynasty, we humans shall serve you for eternity. So basically, the Zhou dynasty actually betrayed humanity for just so that they could be the one to rule.
So we do have a question for you, Rain. GS says, didn't the first emperor, I think he means Sri Hongdi, king of China, make history before his reign illegal? Is it, or isn't it a tale?
That's a tale, because otherwise we wouldn't have all those preserved history. I think he killed a lot of scholars, but he didn't like erase the history, because in ancient China the historian they don't record history as a way to just preserve history. It was actually played like a very a very important function to the functioning of the state, because every historian pretty much act like a blockchain. So basically, when something happens, this historian will take something, will note down. The other one will note down. So when you compare to them, if there is something that that doesn't match, it means something happened. So history in China play like a practical role. So the first emperor didn't make the history book for him illegal.
Okay, yeah, that was just a question that came up in the chat. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I'm going to continue. So basically, the king of the Zhou dynasty like sold out humanity so that he can be the king. So basically, during the final battle against the Shang, between the Shang and the Zhou dynasty allied with the Manu tribe, but they also have the gods fighting with them, and that's why they managed to defeat the Shang dynasty. So seeing that the battle is lost, you can go to the next image. Yeah, next slide. So seeing that the battle is lost, the last king of the Shang dynasty, or the last emperor of mankind, he went to the sacrificial altar and used himself as a sacrifice. Remember, in the magic of the Shang, at that time, the greater the sacrifice, the power of the magic increased exponentially. So him sacrificing himself is the greatest sacrifice and can wield the greatest magic. So he went to the fire and he said that I am the emperor of mankind. Even in death, I shall be a hero among ghosts, and we shall never submit before the gods. So he sacrificed himself, and he cast a great magic across the realm, so to speak. The magic that he cast is that even though the gods cannot, because of the deal that the king of the Zhou made with the king of the gods, even though the god can influence humanity, the gods with a small g can never truly control the fate of mankind. Meaning, like our fate is always ours, even though the god can't influence to it. And that's basically how he died. And after this, the king of the gods came down to the earth himself, and to meet with the king of the Zhou dynasty and name him the Sons of Heaven. And the combination of the deal the Zhou made with the gods and the sacrifice made by the last king of the Shang dynasty, the result is that most of the magic that we humans have has been lost. Like before, we could change the weather, reshape the landscape, and predict the future. All those is gone, and we also lose our access to the other realm, and that is kind of shaped the world that we are today. So this is basically like an ancient conspiracy with the fall of the Shang dynasty.
Yeah. Well, couldn't you interpret the sacrifice of the Shang king as leaving the door open for humanity to regain those powers? Because as long as humanity can chart its own course, humanity might be able to rediscover them.
Yes, and one of the interpretation of the first emperor, because before in the Shang dynasty, the number that is associated with the ruler of mankind is 99, because that's like the greatest number, because China used base 10. And after that, the number used is 95. And the first emperor, part of his objective was actually to reach that height, to be instead of the son of heaven, to be the emperor of mankind again. But he kind of failed. Yeah. So yes.
Well, yeah, he did. As a part of that, I remember hearing. You can tell me if this is a tale or not, but I remember hearing he was asking his philosophers and sages for the elixir of life, and they're like, "Well, we can't really give you that, but here's some mercury, and in the meanwhile, just stop visiting the harem. You'll live longer."
Yes, he actually died because of the mercury, and a lot of emperors thought that mercury will extend their life. But according to the myth, before we human lost most of our magic, we could actually make elixir of life.
Right. So, but from within the logic of this story, right? By preserving humanity's freedom to choose, right? The king of the Shang is preserving humanity's possibility of reclaiming what it lost.
Yes, basically that. You also have this other conspiracy that basically magic and science are basically two paths to like regain what you had before. Basically, before we could do things with magic, but after some catastrophic event, we lost that. But with science, we are trying to regain what is lost in the past.
Okay, well then, Rain, is modern China more Zhou coded or more Shang coded?
I feel it's Zhou coded because you still have this. I think something like the Shang, when you lose it forever. I don't know if you watch. I watched some video by A recently. His concept of like at the solar phase of a civilization and the concept of, I think it was Asabaya. I think for the Chinese civilization, the solar phase of our civilization was ended at the Shang Dynasty, and I don't think you can regain that. I don't know what you think.
Well, okay, so I guess what I'd ask you is, why do you think the Shang Dynasty was the solar period?
I think because during that part, the thing were not very bureaucratic. People believe in magic. We're ruled by warrior priests. We were expansionists. People were hardy, brutal. You go to war. You take prisoners. You will sacrifice them and eat them. That sounds like a more like a bit barbaric, but that's what you expect from when you got this early spark and burst of civilization.
Yeah. Right? So what I would say though is, if you look at the history of China, I think the first emperor begins the process of bureaucratization, but it doesn't really become an established principle until the Han Dynasty. And so we have the Zhou period can be divided into two broad sections, the Western and the Eastern Zhou. The Western Zhou is the United Kingdom from around 1046 to 771, when the Shui New sacked their capital. And then from 771 until like 220 BC, you have the Warring States, the Spring and Autumn period, which is from 771 to like 500. And then from like 500 to 221 is the Warring States. And all of that whole period is still what I would consider warrior aristocracy. Nobody calls themselves emperor yet. They're all kings. They still call themselves kings, and they still are aristocrats. They still primarily work around horses, chariots, right? And then mass armies come with the qi and the legalist reforms. So I would say that the Zhou and the Spring and Autumn period, and even the Warring States period, still have what we might call solar qualities, don't you think?
Yes, but I still feel like he's much dimmer than the Shang Dynasty. That's what I think. Also, I like to add a detail. If you, when we're talking about the conspiracy, another note is that in the conspiracy of the Shang is that the ancient human were so powerful that the Shang Dynasty were actually do much more ancestral worship than worship of gods. That's also part of a bit in link of the myth that the ancient humans were so powerful that we're in control of our own afterlife. So what we're worshiping are our own ancestors, because we do not need the gods because they are not above us. And And that's so if you interpret it from the myth, that's another big thing that humanity lost.
Well, yeah. So with Confucianism, which becomes the dominant
Yeah.
philosophy of China with Han, there really isn't a whole lot of talk about the gods, right? That what ends up happening is in the Middle Ages, the Buddhists end up filling the void of theology. And Confucianism doesn't really have theology about gods. I mean, they're there, and you have proper rituals, but like theories about the gods and how to worship them, that comes more with the Buddhists in the Middle Ages.
Not exactly. The Buddhism introduced Buddhism religion, but they were Chinese folk religion from the time of the Zhou dynasty already, because the Zhou dynasty, like even earlier, they were like gods. I would say just because of the ancestor worship is pretty strong in the Chinese culture, the power of the church, so to speak, never gained the same level as it is in Europe and the Middle East.
Oh, well, that's true. The other thing, though, too, if you look at the Chinese rulers that become the first emperor, they kind of have Shang vibes, though. They may not have human sacrifice, but they are savage. I mean, they just massacre whole armies. They do some. So, for example, with the fall of the Qin dynasty, there was, the first Han emperor was racing to the capital against the king of Wu. And the king of Wu was a semi-civilized nation south of the heartland of China. And he massacred Qin soldiers in revenge for them massacring Wu soldiers. So that sounds kind of Shang-coded, don't you think?
Yes. Yeah, I think but they didn't go to the level of cannibalism. So I would say.
That's true. And of course, if we want to go like into using this mythic element, if we go all the way back, we have the yellow emperors, who, in the Greeks and the Chinese, have a similar view, right? Like, there's this golden age in the past where you have these like semi-divine rulers, and then humanity descends the level of baser metals till you get to like lead. So there is that too.
Yes, actually I agree. Yeah, basically around the time of the Yellow Emperor, basically we human, we can go to the realm of the god directly. We're basically equal to the gods, and now we're just this frail mortal that we are today.
Yeah. So I don't know. I guess it depends on how you want to like weigh it. The bureaucracy, I don't think, begins until the Han, really. So I think we could still say that there was a solar cycle going on during the Spring and Autumn and Warring States period. Maybe not to the same level as earlier, but I would maybe disagree a little bit and say that the solar cycle ends with the Han.
Yeah, maybe my standard a bit too harsh. Like, I think I associate the solar time more as like, when the civilization were still behaving in an extremely barbaric way.
Well, I guess that depends on how you interpret that, right? Because the legend, like in Europe, the Greeks had a similar legend about, you have golden men falling down to lead men. Let's stick to China, though. The yellow emperors, who were like the peak of the golden age in this like mythic cycle, did not engage in human sacrifice, did not engage in cannibalism. They were enlightened, peaceful rulers, right?
I don't think they did a lot of human sacrifice. No, they worked with the god, and they have like mystical magic and weapons that can shape the land.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is, if we look at the Chinese mythic history, like we're talking about here, I would actually argue the Shang Dynasty is a sign of decadence vis-a-vis the yellow emperors, and so this is where I'm more Zhou coded, because they lost the Mandate of Heaven, the Zhou win, and they displaced them. But the yellow emperors they were beneficiaries of mankind. They taught mankind all these things, kind of like the Prometheus legend in Greek mythology.
Yes, I would say that. Like early on, like in the Chinese mythology, we were created by like two gods. We're created by a goddess. Like, she's half human, half snake. She actually, I can actually, if you Google Nuva, N-U, let me just show you this. You can Google this.
Oh, Nuwa. You want me to show that? Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Basically, she's like half.
Oh, she's like half snake.
Yeah, half human, half snake. Actually, when we talk about the golden man, when she actually that's something that I found quite interesting with a lot of, with the Christianity and other Indo-European religion. Let me just find you like even better image. So basically, like what she's like, she's actually her top half is actually human. She actually has arm like top half of a human woman. Basically, what she did is like early on there wasn't any human on Earth, and she was going around the land and she noticed there was like no creature that looks like her. So she basically used her own image to create like actually let me just can I send files and tweet? Oh yeah, I'm gonna send you a Twitter. I think this is a better image.
Okay, yeah.
Oh shit.
Okay, we are going to. That's right. Hold on. I gotta stop that. Share the news screen. Here we go.
Yeah, this is it. So basically, what is interesting is like in the Bible, God created human in His own image.
Yeah.
In the Chinese version, basically, she found out there's like nothing that is because human shape doesn't exist then. So she used her shape to create humanity, and basically, gods are shapeshifters, but the humanoid shape is the best shape to increase your power to cultivate yourself to become more enlightened. So basically, she created a human to create the perfect mortal species for magic and for everything. So there's some I think this vibe of like dominion the land like dominion of human that the earth being of dominion. I think this vibe that you get also from the Christianity.
Yeah. Well, in European mythology or Greek mythology, Nua would be called a lamia. And a lamia is a mythical creature where the top half is a woman and the bottom half is a snake.
Yeah. But in the Chinese version, it's like this is just the shape she like to take shape because the ancient god from the true gods, so to speak, they do not have a true shape. They change like they do not have a true form because they are too powerful to be contained in just one form. But this is the shape she like to create. She like to take.
Right. Well, the hour's almost up. Is there anything you want to leave us with, Rain? We covered a lot of kind of
yeah, I think I covered everything, but I guess it will be interesting for you to comment on the original tweet in the first slide.
Oh yeah. Oh what
Yeah, let's show that tweet again. Yeah, let's show that tweet again. Like what do you think of that?
I'm gonna bring it up. I'm bringing it up, and then I'll tell you what I think about it. Let's see. Here we go. All right. I think so. So Morgoth, I actually agree with his sentiment. He says China's 5,000 years old, America's 248. Well, the idea being that because China's older, there's a lot of inertia behind China. We shouldn't underestimate China. Now, to be fair, though, while America's young, it represents ideals going back to the Greeks. So it's not entirely fair, right? Because the United States represents ideas that go back to the Greeks, which are pretty old, kind of like China. But Raw nationalist, though, is arguing that, well, there isn't a contiguous Chinese history. Like you said, it's closer to 3,000 years. But I would push back. I don't know where he got the idea that Indo-Europeans were the first rulers of China. Like, I've never read anything like that before. That's just not anything that I was aware of or why anybody would say that. And then, yeah, I mean, when you have 3,000 years head of steam behind you, it's definitely, you have your ups and downs. There's the century of humiliation, but China eventually regained much of its lost position.
I guess I would make a I got one of final comments. Like what I noticed is like this idea that the ancient Chinese emperor, like the Yellow Emperor, were actually Indo-European, seem to be quite popular in the right-wing space.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I see. Well, there is one possibility why they might say that. It wouldn't be genetic, and I don't know why you'd say that. the idea of having humanity having a gold age, it's alchemical, it's hermetic. You have a gold age, and then it go to lower metals, and then you eventually get to lead. And Plato talks about this. And so maybe they're looking at the commonality of the legend of the golden age of man descending down to the lead age. And if that's common throughout Eurasia, you might speculate there's a common origin. And if you do that, you might then, if you're more alt-right coded, say that was all white people. So
yeah, and also I know that a lot of those Greek statue people were actually Indian, and they made, because there were multiple replacement of the ruling class in ancient India. They may think that China has been the same. That's my other theory.
Well, the other thing too is with India, right? We don't actually have a major. Sorry, in China, unlike India, we don't have a major racial displacement, right? So the Indus Valley civilization was not Aryan, right? But then you had the Aryan invasion of around 1800 to 1600 BC, which creates, the Brahmin caste.
Yes. Well, in China, as we saw in the genetic study, the modern Chinese are pretty much the same group of people genetically as they were during the Shang and the Zhou dynasty. So
yes. So, Rain, where can people find you and get a hold of you?
They can message me on Twitter, and they can also leave a comment under the video, and I always look at them and I always reply.
All right. Well, thank you, Rain. It's always a pleasure having you on.
Yep. Thank you for having me here.
This is Todd Lewis of the President Fly Podcast, signing off.